So you can't just watch Baahubali the beginning and not finish out the story. Baahubali 2, the conclusion, does exactly what the name promises. But is that conclusion worth the massive time investment? When Bhallaladeva conspires against his brother to become the king of Magizhmadhi, he has him killed by Katappa and imprisons Baahubali's wife. Years later, his brother's son returns to avenge his father's death. So one of the things I loved about Game of Thrones is all of the scheming that went on across the kingdoms and lands. People would plan and lie and double-cross all over the place in order to just accomplish their goals and ultimately secure more power for themselves or their family. With Baahubali 2, we finally get to see how the story plays out. The first 2/3 of this movie are still taking place in the past, showing us what went on between Baahubali and his brother Bhallaladeva, and where all of that contempt culminated. There are so many backhanded deals that are carried out in the narrative. I think the progressions are a little obvious at times, but that didn't take away from the emotional effect that the story created. I could see how a lie that one person was telling was going to affect another down the road, and the strife that it was going to cause. Well, I could predict how they would play out. I was still invested because I was attached to the characters. I was mad for them at the treachery being planned against them and how it would affect their future arcs. But that's a sign of a great story, right? I mean, I was emotionally tied to the outcomes of the characters, which then made me dislike other characters with great intensity. And the consistency of the characters and their actions was wonderful to watch. I mean, this didn't make them any less dynamic. In fact, it actually made them more powerful within the story. The villain would continue in their villainous ways, but continue to ratchet them up, getting more nefarious at every turn. And this made the story wildly exciting to watch. But also, within the awesome story arcs, the movie continues with these grand scale battles and legendary action sequences. I mean, the film also embraces even more of the fantastical elements, allowing some story pieces to fully dive into the fantasy realm and execution. In the first movie, we began to see a love story blossom between Sivu and Avantika, but we didn't get too much of that. Really, I mean, just the beginning of it. In the second movie, we get a huge love story between Baahubali and a princess from a smaller kingdom that he encounters. These interactions are pretty humorous, but they also feel genuine in their progression. There is a sweetness that is captured in their banter. I especially liked how we get to see the playfulness of not only Baahubali, but also Katappa. He's always been a kind and conflicted character, but in this movie, we really get to see his heart shine. And he's a complicated character because he serves the kingdom. But within that, there is a hierarchy of loyalty and duty. And the relationship between Baahubali and Katappa is showcased here to such a large amount that we can feel their friendship and devotion to each other. And then their teamwork. There are some battles the two get into against hordes of attackers, and the way they fight together is outstanding. The fight choreography is also amazing, almost like a ballet as they move amongst all the attackers, working independently, but also keenly aware of where the other is so they can support and protect each other. There's a bunch of wire work in scenes, especially with Baahubali, where he will fly over obstacles and attackers. I mean, it's so much fun to watch, every single time adding an incredible amount of excitement to the fights. Now, just like in the first movie, there is still a ton of slow-mo that's utilized. And again, sometimes it enhances the action sequences, allowing us to see the details of movements and drawing them out to be larger than life. But the overuse can also become tiresome. There were points where I just wanted the action to play out at full speed so I could enjoy the harried and frantic pace of battle. Now, luckily, we do get some of the fights at regular speed, but not enough to make me forget about all the slow-mo. The acting in this is so immersive. The heroes are easy to love, but the villains are played with such passion and cunning that while they're despicable, it's hard not to be drawn to them also. Baahubali continues to be the character we want to see succeed. He's kind, fair, honorable, and powerful. Katappa is charismatic and fatherly with a kindness that's infectious, but he can also be brutal when it's necessary. Sivagami, who is Baahubali's mom, is aggravating and stern, but she also has an honor code that unfortunately can be manipulated. Devasena is the princess Baahubali falls for, and I love how strong-willed she is. She's not easily intimidated, which makes her strength a threat to some. And then we have Bhallaladeva, Bahu's brother. I love how cunning and devious this guy is. He's the character we love to hate, but he's dynamic and has a great on-screen presence. He's also the perfect antagonist to Bahu because they're matched in strength and ability. Now, probably the evilest character is Bhallaladeva's father, Bhallaladeva. I mean, this guy is like the devil himself, whispering all kinds of schemes and ideas into his son's ear. He is so hungry for power that he can't have that he risks his own son's well-being in the pursuit of familial power. I mean, all of these players, though, come together to create an intriguing and engaging narrative. Something I really appreciate about not only this movie, but just Indian films in general as I watch them, is how the songs that are featured throughout the film, whether they're part of a musical number or they're playing over landscapes and scenery, they're actually part of the dialogue. The words are important within the story, giving us context for what's going on, much like a narration would, but these are more emotional and powerful because of their delivery. But just like in the first film, there is the use of musical stingers that can become distracting because they feel emotionally manipulative in their obviousness. They're not all bad, but on the whole, these were noticeable, and I don't think the musical score should be as noticeable in this way as they are here. And just like in the first movie, there are a lot of special effects that are utilized, not only in the action, but also to digitally create settings. Now, while some of them are noticeably CGI and not always flawless or even the best, they do work to create a huge sense of grandeur for the environments and this world. The kingdom and palace are monstrous, with towering temples and buildings, massive pyres with fire, and even the courtyards filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers. I mean, these help to show the scale, giving even more weight to the power of a kingdom and the responsibility and influence that the leader holds. It's important to remember that this is continuing the story that was started in the first movie, where it started in the present and then went to a flashback to give us all the history. This story continues in that flashback, but then in the final act brings us back to the present that began in the first movie. And with that, we get another crazy epic battle. I mean, this is the showdown that is generations in the making. The full circle of the story is awesome as we see how all of the events led to this point, where the rightful king has returned to challenge the usurper for the throne. So overall, this is a worthy conclusion to the captivating story that was begun in the first film. The acting is engaging with rich characters that are charismatic and detailed. The action and choreography are exciting, with battles that put a huge smile on my face as the characters move about in almost superhuman ways. The story of love, devotion, and honor is inspiring and enthralling, sucking me in and then holding my attention captive for the entire runtime. I loved the scheming and the crafty plans that set up double crosses and deceptions for the characters, making the story complex, but still easy to follow. While not all of the effects are awesome, on the whole, they build out a world that looks great, and because the ride is so entertaining, it's easy to overlook shortcomings with the effects. The use of slow motion is excessive, but consistent with the first movie, so it doesn't seem out of place. I had a blast with this movie and had a huge smile on my face throughout it. And if you're looking for something exciting and aren't afraid to invest a bit of time in a well-told story, definitely give this one a watch. There's no sex, nudity, or profanity, but a massive amount of violence. Now, I give Baahubali, which this score is for both movies together, 4.5 out of 5 couches. So have you seen this epic? What did you think of it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.